slides, make some new slides. And so one of the things I did in reply to this was add a little bit about the history of post-quantum to show like this little esoteric group of people working on this. So this actually started more than 10 years ago. So 2003 then came up with the term post-quantum. There was research before, but this is kind of the focus moment because you have grabbed the concept that you need something which remains secure against quantum computers and that we can use already now, and now we need a term for this. And so at that point, he came up on the Crypto mailing list with the term post-quantum. And it took a few years to get more people working on it, so it was sufficient mass to have a workshop. And so under the first eCrypt, we organized the first post-quantum crypto workshop, which was a good 60 people or something in Leuven, but it was several invited talks, rather small in comparison to nowadays. And then it kept going, so it was picked up as a workshop with proceedings. The first one was typical eCrypt workshop, just workshop records you could publish elsewhere, you could have your invited talk and so on. And so then it kept going. We were like on a not too optimistic year and a half schedule. We felt like, well, there's enough for every 2 years, but maybe there's enough for every year and a half. And then finally, in 2013 or 2014, there was the H2020 call, and that one for the first time mentioned post-quantum as a topic. So it had reached people as high up as in the EU who make the funding decisions, and so that was important. PQCRYPTO had already more than 120 participants. That was the one in Waterloo, so there was Mike Mosca making great advertising, getting lots of people involved. And then also NIST hosted a workshop on post-quantum cryptography. After that, sometime in August, the NSA woke up. And actually, it's kind of amusing to look back because with the Internet Archive, you can actually see the different version of the announcement. This is not the announcement that most people put on their slides. But this is the initial announcement from the 11th of August. On the 11th of August, they were like, something is happening. I guess we have to say something as well. We better not caught laying back. So somehow there is a transition to post-quantum crypto, so we need to do something. They got a little bit of trouble from the PR department, and now they are initiating the transition, which is much better, much more active. So they kind of came too late, and that was my comment to Kenny before, like they came too late to party and botched the entrance. So to me, it's really they're just picking up something when it was almost too late. However, there is all the positive aspects of this, that lots of people now say, oh yeah, this is important, we're getting certainly more attention, getting more people in the press and so on. But there's also the downside that you now have people in tinfoil hats coming up to you and go like, oh my God, I always thought this was something good or was something esoteric, but the NSA is recommending it. So, oh my God, go away, it's horrible. It's NSA endorsed crypto. That was my comment, like we've been working on this for, well, at that point, 12-something years. It's been a subject that came from the community. It's something that the community, well, Crypt doesn't get more basic than that, like basic in the sense of involving everybody, totally democratic, totally open, and that's where post-quantum crypto comes from. It's not something that the NSA came up with first and is now enforcing on us. All right, so really mainstream. Kenny mentioned before, we had 240 participants in Fukuoka, and if you feel like, well, you would have been like to sit there, well, the next one is coming. Next year, we have Utrecht, the Netherlands, so we're organizing PQCRYPTO there, and we'll also have a whole week of summer school. So if all of this is like, well, maybe I should learn about this, please come to our summer school. Now, how urgent is this? Now, this was already in Mike's talk with the X plus Y greater or less than Z. So the issue is that things are recorded. So in the X, in the time that it takes till you don't care about of this, that might be you think your communication is going over the wire now, but actually your communication is going over the wire and there's a constant wiretap. Whatever your TLS connection is, the first initial Diffie-Hellman handshake will be recorded. And because that's just Diffie-Hellman, somebody who has that metadata and all the data of the connection can go back in time once they have a quantum computer and once the quantum computer is bored enough and doesn't care anymore about encrypting the cool guys and is down to decrypting cryptographers' data. So at some point, they can just go back in time. Now, why don't we switch to post-quantum crypto now? Because it feels like, yeah, well, we could instantly stop this by just using post-quantum crypto. Well, there is a word, so there must be something. And yes, we do have a few systems that we believe to be post-quantum secure. Certainly further research needed, but so far it looks like there is no strong attack. There's nothing which renders its polynomial time. We don't know the exact security. We do not know how many qubits we need. We don't know how many qubit operation we'll need, but we have not found any way of getting a polynomial time attack. We also believe there is no sub-exponential attack, but please join, please look. But the systems that we have are all either big or slow, at least in comparison to what we have. There are some proposals now which are reaching the speed of ECC. It's usually easy to reach the speeds, but it's much harder to reach the key sizes. But with ECC, we've really gotten spoiled. So with the big and slow, you might have seen the logo in the bottom of the slide. So that's the PQCRYPTO project's logo. It's a tortoise. They're known to live very long, and they're very robust, and they're very, very sturdy. So what we're doing with the project is aim for stability, aim for something which lasts 100 years, hopefully longer, and well, take into account that, well, turtles are not the fastest. So this is a project running for the next 3 years, and we're working on getting a design, well, a portfolio and implementing it for all the pieces of crypto that we care about and that are most impacted by quantum computers. So that includes public key cryptography, but it also includes symmetric key cryptography because you might change the trade-offs between block sizes and so on. So then the question came up, standardize now, standardize later. Is it actually too early, is it too late? So in favor of standardizing now is certainly, it takes a long time to roll out crypto, and at least, well, Liquen was making the comment that for companies it's very important to have systems standardized. Your engineer will not take your system if there's not a standard. So if you want this to be used, then we actually need to have a standard adopting it. And we, at the latest, need to be up and running once quantum computers are there. Now, there's also arguments for standardizing later. I just said we have this research project and we expect to have much better systems in like 3, 4, 5 years. And it would be kind of a pain if we're then stuck with the big clunky system while we have a nice speedy system where we have much better understanding of the security. I don't expect it to be more secure, but as secure, secure enough. And we're gonna certainly get a better trade-off between security against quantum computers and security against classical computers. At the moment, we're totally over-designing because we're worried that quantum computers are more powerful, but we don't actually have that powerful quantum algorithms. And so once it's rolled out, so if we get the hardware designers to adopt something, it will be really, really hard to change that. So for that, I'm always saying, well, hold off. Please don't take these things yet. Please wait for another 3, 4 years because it's going to be nicer. And how about the people who actually need something now? So what we've been settling on is basically recommend now, standardize later. If anybody needs something, we should give them the best that we have right now. And those people who really feel like they need something now, like their life might depend on it, and that's more than just my normal Diffie-Hellman handshake, I think they don't care so much about efficiency, they don't care so much about key size. It is inconvenient, but it's inconvenient anyway. And so they will be happy if in 4 years I give them something more speedy and they can upgrade to something. If it's in a standard and if the standard is down to 1 or 2 candidates, it will be really hard to change. But if my recommendations get to something better and say, well, the old stuff you can still use if that was good enough for you, I think that is the optimum. But that shouldn't mean that we let our guards down and say, oh, well, just make some recommendations, the rest will come in 5 years, because most standardization bodies need a long warm-up period. If I'm looking at NIST's schedule of asking for submissions during this next year, and then the competition, or whatever it is officially called, a study period, analysis period, that will be a few years. And my understanding is that we are allowed to change the systems so we can get the new research, the better research that we have in 3, 4 years. And so I think that is the best way we can deal with this. Now, as the PQCRYPTO project, we've followed on this. We actually had an entertaining meeting where I was saying, okay, everybody please bring your own recommendations. And then, you know, they all bring their pet projects. And yes, I've been working on this yesterday, and I think it's really, really exciting. All right, so I also gave them another slide, which was a kind of dystopian future, which was saying, well, you know, in 2016, the world adopted what you recommended. It's now 10 years later, the government has changed, the world has gotten a worse place, and the life of many people depend on the security of the system. like your life depends on this. So that made people a little more conservative in their recommendations. We had another scenario where it was more about organ trades, which involved digital signatures. So most of this afternoon was spent on, well, getting recommendations and always asking, hey, would you bet your kidneys on this? All right, so the next slide is the list of crypto systems that some researchers were willing to bet their kidneys on. All right, here we go. So for symmetric crypto, we do have quantum algorithms that basically speed up, well, Grover speeds up brute force search, so we need to have larger keys, we need to deal with brute force key searches. Now, this is still conservative in the sense that if you have a quantum algorithm which takes 2 to the 128 operations, the term operations is not very well defined. So at the last PQCRYPTO, there was one research paper which was showing that an operation is something like 2 to the 32 steps. So you have 2 to the 128 times those 2 to the 32. So it's actually designing for something larger than 128-bit quantum security. But as I said, we wanted to be super on the conservative side. Nobody likes to lose their kidneys. And so these are like that level of over-designed. Similarly, if you say, look at the Michaelis crypto system, that's something which has security against a normal computer, a conventional computer, of at least 2 to the 256. So that's something which is huge, far out. And then we assume that Grover won't do more than taking a square root of that. And so at the moment we suggest that for 128-bit security, even though most likely if you do more research, we'll get that this one has more like 2 to the 192, maybe 2 to the 200 security. At this moment, the best attacks we have do not do much damage to it. The best quantum attacks are far, far away from what we assume here. And then the last I'm skipping over authentication. So there we're using information theoretic max anyway. So there, as long as your key size was large enough, we don't see any need to update. And then finally, signatures. And since this has been mentioned a few times so far, we're also recommending hash-based signatures. And I have a few more slides on hash-based. There, the big distinction is a question of functionality. So far, everything was like, okay, it's a system, and it has different performance, has different analysis, has different characteristics, but they're very much replaceable. If you use AES with a mode, then you're basically having a stream cipher. But if you use XMSS, that's a hash-based signature scheme, which the CFIG is currently looking into, then it's a signature which has a state, which is very different from a stateless signature. So let me flip to the next slide here. So hash-based signatures, up there, the thing you can't read is a screenshot that you can get if you click on that URL, which you can read, and the slides will be online. So that is the draft for XMSS. Andreas Hülsing, who's in the audience, is one of the authors of this draft, and it's explaining how to do a modern version of Lamport signature scheme. So it's a hash-based signature scheme, but it's not a one-time signature, it's a multi-time signature. Well, choose a number and that many signatures. Now that means at every moment you need to know how many messages have you signed. Me as a person, I think I can remember this. Or I take a little notepad. My computer, maybe if it doesn't shut down. If I'm Google and I would like to share my certificate between all the computers in my web server, then I can't do that because computer 1 doesn't know what computer 2 is doing. Computer 1 might have used a signature while computer 2 wasn't listening or was simultaneously doing something. So there are lots of situations where you have problems with concurrency, or if you have a virtual machine, you crash and restore, you accidentally would reuse a signature. However, there are also many systems where it's totally fine to have a stateful signature. So when you're doing operating system signatures, there is the one signature, and it's a big process to sign something there, and you better remember when the last time was that you signed something. So in those situations, you might be perfectly fine with having something stateful. So the benefits of having hash-based signatures is that, well, your ingredients is a hash function. If you're doing signatures, then we all start by taking our long, long message and hashing it. So we always need to have a signature, we always need to have a hash function. So hash-based signatures need a hash function and nothing else. The public key is nicely small, we really understand the security very well, and it's pretty fast. So those are good benefits of the scheme. There's the downside that we have the state, and Tanja Lange from Google nicely characterizes this as a foot cannon. So something to shoot yourself in the foot, not just with a pistol, but with a larger object. And also, compared to, say, ECC, the signature is somewhat bigger. And he was looking at my slides before, like saying, it's not that big. It's all right. For a post-quantum signature scheme, the signature is all right. So if you've gotten to the point that you're accepting, you have to use public post-quantum signatures, this is fine, else you're in trouble. But there's a state. All right, so eliminating the state. So there have been proposals for stateless signatures based on hash functions before, so there's a 1987 idea from Goldreich, which is basically saying, well, you take your usual Merkle tree and just make it gigantic. You make it so big, like 2 to the 256 wide at the bottom, so that you can just pick one of those and use it, and the chance that you ever have the same one is minimal. If you're aiming for 2 to the 128 security, and you have 2 to the 256, then Bursty paradoxon is fine with you. You can just pick any one, and you'll not hit any of those twice. Assuming you're not doing more than 2 to the 128 signatures, which I don't think you'll get done at any point soon, and you might even cut this down a little bit. However, that's kind of inconvenient, so okay, then you come up with trees of trees and trees and trees. Now, we optimized this thing and came up with something which is like a 0.6 megabytes for a signature. To put this in contrast, I was mentioning operating system updates and web pages. Now, a web page often has more than one signature, so that's like quite a bit overhead. So you like Alexa Top 1000, that's like the normal web pages. You download a few pictures. It's a third of this web page for just one signature. So the system that we designed, and we is a whole bunch of authors, this was a paper at last year's Eurocrypt, including Andreas Hülsing in the back there. Our signature scheme is small in comparison. It's 0.041 megabyte, also known as 41 kilobytes. So it's smallish for a post-quantum signature that is stateless. There are smaller ones, but it's something where we really, really understand the security well. So both of these schemes, XMSS, if you can handle states, and Sphinx, if you would like to avoid states, are systems where we're very, very sure about, where we have high confidence that it's secure. Is it absolutely optimal? Can you squeeze out? Can you turn this into 0039 megabytes, something? Maybe. Can you make a better function inside? Yes, there are interesting research problems, but this is so far built from really standard and well-analyzed components, so we're feeling good about the security. Doesn't mean it's the last word, but means that the skeleton, the way that the signatures are done, is something we have high confidence in. All right, last slide, if you're interested in more stuff. So these are a bunch of links. There's the EU project. There's also a Twitter feed of the EU project if you're interested. And then anything about PQCRYPTO.org. That page at the moment is pretty outdated, so if you find that your paper is missing, that is very likely the case if you published during the last few years, please, please, please send us entries. We have a much shorter time putting entries in there than we have going through all the proceedings and all the ePrint papers and figuring out what we're missing. So please help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, because we're running out of time, I suggest we leave questions for the panel discussion again. And, but we can have the coffee break right now and then resume at 4, and then we'll have the panel discussion between 4 and 5. So see you in 15 minutes.